The perfect family. My brother Elliot and I are close. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing weird or anything like that. We're just close. Sure, as kids we fought over dumb stuff as brothers and sisters do, and as teenagers in high school he pretended not to have a little sister, and I pretended he was just another jerk jock. But despite all of that, we're close. Now that he's out of the house and I'm in college, we don't see each other as often, but we try to talk on the phone at least once a week. Not many people can pinpoint why it is that they are close with their siblings, but I can. And I know he can too. Maybe without our shared experience, we still would have been close, but what happened to us really nailed it down. We never talked about it, but I know we both remember it. Every time someone suggests telling scary stories or start talking about odd experiences, it looms heavily over us. Even to this day, I can't make sense of it. But this is the reason my brother and I are so close. If nothing else, this is the one thing we will always have in common, one thing that will keep us together. It happened in the summer. I was 9 years old, my brother was 12. It was a pretty uneventful summer so far. We grew up in a sleepy town in the northeast. It sits on the coast and is pretty much split in two, with half of the residents being dock workers or fishers, and the other being a wealthier type who commute to the city every day. With the exception of my family and a few others, it is mostly those richer who have children, and even though the town is on the coast, it's not exactly a tourist attraction. So many of those wealthier people often leave on vacation for the summer. This, of course, means the children are gone as well, which means my brother and I had a long stream of boring, drawn-out summers with all of our friends gone. This summer was no exception. At some point during the summer, our parents began to get fed up with us. Being bored and young, we often got into things and caused trouble. Looking back, I have to laugh. I mean, we really gave my mother, who worked from home, a hard time. Elliot and I would run around yelling and breaking things while my mother tried her hardest to get work done in her office. My father was out working on the docks. One day, I guess my brother and I were being particularly terrible, and my mother finally told us to go play outside. We could even go into the woods behind our house if we wanted to, something she had never let us do before. Of course, she told us we could only go so far, but still, it was like we had a whole new world to explore. So Elliot and I gathered some adventure stuff that we needed if we were going to explore this new territory. Elliot got his backpack from inside, a small green one with his name stitched across the side and frogs lining the outer pocket. He filled it with a compass he had gotten for his birthday, some walkie-talkies, a notebook to take adventure notes, and some Band-Aids. I was in charge of the necessities, which to us included a box of Pop-Tarts, 2 water bottles, and a bag of goldfish. It was around noon when we set off to explore the woods behind our house. With a word, smile, and a warning to be back before 1:30, my mother sent us off. We started simple, walking in a straight line from the center of our backyard into the woods. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what we found to be so exciting. The woods were thick and the air was hot and sticky, but still, we really felt like adventurers. Every once in a while, my brother would mark a rock or a tree with a sharp rock he had found so that we wouldn't get lost on the way back. We were about 30 minutes into our exploration and couldn't have been more than half a mile away from our backyard when we saw it. There, in the woods, sat a little house. It was squat and made of brick and stone and looked neatly kept. It looked as if someone had just dropped it out of the sky. Naturally, my brother and I decided to move closer and get a better look. As we walked, we noticed the plants from the woods around it thinning out and crunching under our feet. The closer we got, the more dead plants crunched under us. We thought nothing of it and kept going until we got to the side window of the house. We peeked into the window, praying that no one was there to catch us snooping. What we saw has been ingrained into my mind forever. It was a perfect, pristine 1950s-style kitchen, all pastel blue cupboards and linoleum tiles. I looked at Elliot, and he looked back at me. There was something eerie about this. It was clean and perfect, way too perfect to be in the middle of the woods. "What is this place?" I asked Elliot, my voice quivering. I couldn't put my finger on it. The whole thing was just creepy. "I don't know," he answered, not turning his head away from the window. He took my hand in his and continued looking through the window. I'm not sure why, but I had the sudden urge to run, to take off with my brother and forget this place even existed. Before I could say anything to him, we heard a booming voice behind us. "Can I help you?" We turned around, wide-eyed and fearful at the idea that we had gotten caught snooping. There stood a man in a crisp gray suit and a matching hat, a wide smile spread across his face. My brother was the first to speak. No, sir. Sorry to bother you. We didn't know anyone lived here." The man laughed, just as booming as his voice. "Well now, of course someone lives here. What's a house without someone living in it?" Elliot and I looked at each other, completely thrown off by this man's friendliness. He had just caught us, 2 strange kids, spying into his home, and acted as if we were old friends. "Say, what's your names? Would you like to come in? My wife and I were just about to have lunch." I glanced at Elliot, and he glanced at me. This whole situation was so surreal that we did the first thing that came to mind. We introduced ourselves. "I'm Elliot, and this is my sister Gracie." "Darling," we heard a woman's voice call from behind the house. "Lunch is ready." As the woman rounded the corner, Elliot and I took a step back. just like the house and the man. The one was completely perfect. She wore a bright red house dress that flared out at the waist, and her hair was curled like a doll's. Just like her husband, she had a large smile plastered across her face. Compared to the forest around us, they both stuck out like sore thumbs. "Well, who are these two lovely children?" she cooed. "Darling, this is Elliot and his sister Gracie." They both continued to smile at us until the man spoke. "Why don't you come around for lunch? You can meet our children. They're just about your age." Before we had any chance to do otherwise, the man put his hand on my brother's shoulder, leading him away. The woman took my hand gently and followed him, continuing to smile the whole time. "I'm Mary Jean Edwards, and that's my husband, Robert Edwards." She smiled down at me. I nodded feebly, and as we turned the corner, I saw a small door which led to the kitchen. Robert was already leading my brother inside. "I've made up some fresh lemonade and turkey sandwiches for lunch. I hope that's all right," Mary Jean said, gesturing for Elliot and me to sit at the table. "We also have some potato chips, hot dogs, and I've just made cookies." As if to emphasize the point, she opened the oven and the scent of fresh cookies wafted out. "Mary Jean, where did those cans run off to?" "Oh dear, I'm not sure. Perhaps they're in the foyer." 1 minute, Mary Jean ran off, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Robert just continued to stare down at us, smiling. "Here they are," Mary Jean announced as she returned. 2 children, a boy and a girl, in tow behind her. Of course, they were no different from their parents. Each had a wide smile plastered onto their faces and flawless blonde hair. The girl was wearing a perfect purple dress with a white collar, the kind I normally would have envied, and her hair was pulled back in 2 braids with perfect matching purple ribbons. The boy was wearing a more leisurely outfit of a polo shirt and crisp khakis, his hair parted to the side. Mary Jean gestured to her children. "This is Bobby and this is Linda." Neither child said anything, but continued to smile at us. "Well, how about we all sit and eat? Everything looks delicious," Robert said as Mary Jean began setting out food. The kids sat across from us, and it was as I started to nibble on a sandwich that my brother kicked me under the table. I looked at him angrily, but he wasn't looking at me. He was white as a ghost, and his eyes were fixed on one of the children, the girl. She stared at us, actually us. She seemed to be looking both of us in the eye at the same time. That's when I noticed what Elliot was looking at. A steady drop of blood trickled from her ear. She continued to stare at us, seemingly unaware of the blood and smiling, still smiling, just as the rest of the family, none of them eating. "Well, this is just delicious, Mary Jean," Robert said, breaking the silence. The food on his plate was untouched. "Thank you, darling. I know how much you love when I cook." I looked over at the boy who was silently smiling at me, almost completely still. He blinked once, and even from across the table I noticed a few of his eyelashes fall out. "Well, who wants some cookies?" Mary Jean stood, clearing the uneaten food of her family and placing it with a platter of cookies. As she walked back to her seat, her food caught the edge of my brother's chair, and she began to tip over. She grabbed the edge of the table, and that's when I knew for sure my brother and I had stumbled onto something completely unnatural. When she grabbed the table, her hand made a horrid, hollow chink. I recognized the sound from all the times I had awoken after a doll dropped off my bed. I don't know how, but my brother and I seemed to get the same idea. We both jumped up from the table and ran out the door. I remember him grabbing my hand as tears streamed down my face. I kept crying and asking who those people were. We somehow managed to find our way back home, despite us having no real concept of where we were going. My brother had dropped his backpack, compass included, in the house and didn't pick it up before leaving. When we got back to the house, we told our mother everything, crying the whole time. She called the police, and they searched the woods. They found nothing, no family, no house, no sign of anything that shouldn't be there. The police thought we were lying. My mother thought we just got spooked and somehow fabricated a memory. My brother and I, though, we know it happened, because just the other day, I got a call from my brother. Apparently he had come home from work, and there was a package at the doorstep addressed to him. When he opened it, he said he nearly fainted. It was the tiny green backpack with the frogs on it. It was dirty and worn, but he could still make out his name stitched across it. What was worse, though, was that laying on top of it was a single, perfect, pristine purple bow.